Joining me right now is the man himself, the personal attorney for President Trump, former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani. Rudy, good to see you. Thanks for being here again.
Thank you for having me on. Although I've been banned, I'm glad to see you have the courage to have me on. I'm very dangerous.
Yeah, well, you mentioned
they must
something.
think I'm very dangerous.
You've been tweeting already about this morning, about the controversy slamming the mainstream media becoming, quote, blind. But let's talk about what you just referred to. We had letters. The Biden campaign is demanding the major networks stop booking you as a guest on their programs. The campaign wrote this letter, reading in part, quote, by giving him your airtime, you are allowing him to introduce increasingly unhinged, unfounded, and desperate lies into the national conversation. Your response to this letter from the Biden campaign, Rudy?
The reason they were rattled yesterday is because they were confronted on your show with something they don't know about, facts. I didn't do anything on
You brought affidavits to the show yesterday.
This is an affidavit under oath. We presented it. It basically says Joe Biden is guilty of bribery. Now, Shokin could be telling the truth or lying, but he's willing to go under oath. The whistleblower is hiding somewhere.
Just to be clear, Shokin was the prosecutor.
Shokin is the prosecutor who was fired.
In Ukraine, he was fired.
Yeah. And the reason they want me to be silenced is not because I'm unhinged. It's because I've got facts. And because he's guilty. And he knows it. And he knows I have a lot more facts. I have a new one today.
You have another affidavit.
Oh, they're going to be... I got a lot of affidavits and a lot of statements, even videotapes. So this one is, you know how they said he was, Shokin was dismissed for corruption, and there was no investigation going on. This is an apology from the people that were representing Biden's son, from the Blue Star Strategies company. And it's an apology for dissemination of false information by U.S. representatives and public figures on the activity of the prosecutor general. Basically, they're admitting to the people there, we had to exaggerate these claims of corruption to cover, his firing. So, wow. Now corruption, look, I'm not trying to be insulting, but corruption is rather prevalent in Ukraine. Now, if this guy Shokin was really, really corrupt, he'd have like a big car and a big home like Lutsenko. The other phony thing they did yesterday on all the shows and all the in-the-tank media bought it, they put a guy named Lutsenko on who said, I didn't see any criminality in Biden in Ukraine. You know why? Because he's the corrupt prosecutor who dismissed the case. He's the guy Biden bought and paid for.
But Rudy, are you getting at all a feeling that all of this is becoming a blur to the American people?
No, I'm getting
I'm just saying.
I'm getting a feeling that the house of cards is starting to fall on Biden. It's going to be impossible for Shiftless Schiff to pull this thing on the president when Biden actually did what he's claiming the president did, and they're trying to ignore it.
Do you think you should have brought this up sooner rather than not bringing it up as it looks like it's a response to what they're saying to you, that you went to Ukraine, met with people, you're the president's personal attorney, maybe you should not have been meeting with Ukrainian officials? Because if there's real wrongdoing that Hunter Biden did, why are we just learning about this now?
Because I brought it out in March, and I brought it out in April, and I brought it out in May, and I wrote about it. And I tweeted about it.
Why is this getting lost?
Because I'm going to tell you why. Because the media covered it up. That's why. Because they're corrupt and they covered it up. I think my first public statement about this goes back to February. I have written about it. I've tweeted about it. Go look at my tweets. I lay out the crime of bribery. Let me, like I just did, like in law school. Here's why it's so absurd to run away from this. The crime of bribery is offering something of value in exchange for official action. Joe Biden offered $1.2 billion in exchange for firing the prosecutor who was investigating his son.
$1.2 billion was America's aid. $1.2 billion of American aid,
which they desperately needed. It can be anything of value.
Okay.
It can be anything of value.
So now they're charging that the president did that. So now they're charging that that's what the president did by holding back aid while, in fact, he was waiting to get scoop on Joe Biden and his son and about the origins of the Russia probe.
Right. Difference? We have proof. They don't. This is called direct evidence. What they have is hearsay evidence, which, except for this like shady change in the rules, would have been totally acceptable for the last 50 years.
This is a good point that you brought up.
I'm getting a little hinky about this because, and also we have Schiff basically predicting 2 weeks earlier almost the language of the lawyer's complaint.
Well, that's a good point, because the president fired back at Adam Schiff in a tweet storm last night, saying that Schiff may actually be the one committing treason. He said that the president also saying that he deserves to meet his accuser. Now, we have the soundbite of Adam Schiff when he first started the committee, and he basically embellished what the letter said.
Right.
That's what the president was.
No, he lied about the letter. He didn't embellish. Okay. He stood in front of the American people with millions of people listening, and he lied. He put on a stupid, phony show, just like he lied when he said he had direct evidence of Russian collusion. I'm waiting for it, Schiff.
So connect the dots for us.
Maybe if he calls me as a witness and we decide to show up, we'll ask him to produce the evidence.
Will you testify when you're subpoenaed? He says a subpoena is coming, by the way.
Well, maybe he should give it to the New York Times or the Washington Post. They could do some useful work for him.
Will you testify?
I can't answer that question right now. That's a very, very difficult question for a lawyer. Despite the fact that the swamp media doesn't accept it, even President Trump has constitutional rights called the right to counsel, attorney-client privilege, attorney-client work product, things like that. I would really love to challenge the illegitimacy of this committee. I can't see how you can have a committee run by a guy who's judged the case already. And over again, and has lied about the case already.
In a nutshell, tell us.
By the way, they're proceeding as if it's an impeachment, formal impeachment proceeding. It's not. They never got a vote of Congress. Yeah. I don't know what a court would do with a subpoena from an illegitimate committee like that.
I spoke with an independent voice yesterday, the former AG, Michael Mukasey. So the Judge Mukasey was on Sunday Morning Futures with me. He said this about President Trump's phone call with the Ukraine leader. Watch this. Michael Mukasey, you are a voice that is independent and we can trust. Did the president do anything wrong here that the American people need to understand?
Wrong, you mean illegal?
Yeah.
No. He suggesting that he was talking to a foreign leader about getting information that might be useful to him in an election is probably indiscreet. It is not, as far as I know, unlawful under any statute that I'm aware of.
And today, Mukasey writes an op-ed in the Journal, and that op-ed is titled John Durham's Ukrainian Lead. So I want you to connect the dots for us here. Why was the early contents of the Steele dossier, which we know Hillary Clinton paid for, that started in Ukraine?
You're darn right it did. And one of the cases that was dismissed here by Biden was the case on George Soros's company that was funding a lot of the false information that was produced in the Ukraine. That's how I got into this, Maria. Every one of these networks, including Chris Wallace yesterday, got me really annoyed, said Giuliani was digging up dirt for the 2020 election. Like heck I was. You know what I was doing? I was investigating allegations that go back to November of last year, before Biden was even a candidate, of massive corruption that interfered with the information that I could have used to ward off the entire Mueller probe. When we get that information, plus a little bit more, I think we're going to be pretty close to showing that this was an entire frame-up in which 4 or 5 governments were involved, and somebody back in Obama land was orchestrating it. Also, I asked the following question. In December of 2015, the New York Times wrote a really terrible, terrible article about the Bidens, about how can Biden talk about corruption in Ukraine when his son is pulling down millions from the most corrupt oligarch. At that point, did Biden wake up out of his sleep, and did he realize what his son was doing? How can he say he didn't know?
Rudy,
he doesn't read the Times? Did Obama call him in?
Very few people have shined the spotlight on the origins of the Russia probe the way I have on this program, on Sunday Morning Futures, as early as I have.
Very few
2 years ago. So I get you. I understand, and I know what went on. However, where are the indictments? I asked you this yesterday. When are we going to see Bill Barr come out and explain to the American people how Donald Trump was framed, then candidate Trump, and then President Trump? And what about John Durham's investigation? How come this is taking so long? Because half of the country still thinks he colluded. You know that.
Maria, I have to be very discreet about this, but when my fellow Republicans criticized my doing this investigation, who was doing it if I didn't do it? We have a Senate. They've known this corruption by Biden.
Lindsey Graham says he's going to do a deep dive. Where is it?
Excuse me, I love Lindsey, but I can't help but think the fact that he's an ex-senator. Look, these facts have been out there since 2015.
Yeah, yeah.
The facts have been out there about the conflict, the massive conflict. The facts have been out there for 2 years given Schweiker's book.
Peter Schweitzer.
Nobody in the Senate, nobody in the Justice Department, nobody in the FBI. Not only that, my witnesses say the FBI deliberately pushed them away, and so did DOJ.
So I want to ask you about
So I had to investigate it myself and put it out publicly.
Yes, you did.
Otherwise, we'd still be sitting here going,
but I'm wondering if you think this is all getting muddied in the water. People don't. I mean, anybody on either side of the aisle should be upset if Peter Strzok and Andrew McCabe and all these guys put their finger on the scale and tried to stop Donald Trump and reverse an election where the people voted. Anybody on both sides of the aisle should be upset. However, now with all of this, they are muddying the waters. Are you concerned that people just don't understand what's going on? I spoke yesterday with Ohio Congressman Mike Turner, and I asked him about Schiff's version, which he called a parody, which he came and he had his own version of the president's phone call with the president of Ukraine. Here's what he said.
He instead sat down and read things that were just absolutely false, putting words in the president's mouth that the president did not say. Now, I believe he did so because if you actually read the words the president says, they're not as helpful to Adam Schiff's case, so he had to make things up. Fiction is always better when you write it yourself, and that's what Adam Schiff has been doing since he's had the gavel this year.
So there you go, but he also said, I don't think it was okay that the president brought up Biden to the Ukrainian leader.
Well, if you consider the fact that what the president is talking about is what could be a very serious crime committed by a vice president of the United States that compromises our country. Why do you think the Ukrainians paid Hunter Biden that much money? Why do you think the Chinese paid him that much money? For his skill? I mean, the poor kid is challenged. You know that. I mean, it's a shame.
I don't know that. I don't know anything about Hunter Biden.
One fact. Shortly before the Ukrainians put him into this multi-million-dollar job, he got thrown out of the military for drug addiction. You don't put a guy on a board of a company who's got a problem like this.
Okay.
And the Chinese don't pay him $1.5 billion. So
well, the Chinese, I understand. The Chinese
pretty darn
do
smart,
that.
Right?
I mean, I know the Chinese do that. They try to buy.
Let's just talk like regular people.
Yeah.
What were the Chinese buying? Hunter Biden's skill? Or Joe Biden's office that doesn't belong to him?
Everything you say, I understand.
I got to keep saying it.
However, your challenge is cutting through all of this.
Okay.
And yet, how are you going to do that? Because now half the country thinks the president's going to be out of office and impeached.
Well, I must be doing a pretty good job or they wouldn't want to silence me. If I was screwing it up, you think they wouldn't let me just keep going?
All right.
I'm pretty proud of the fact that I think I'm the first guy that a presidential campaign was stupid enough to say, let's silence him. And I know why they're doing it. They know I have the affidavits and the facts. They deal with lies all the time. And they lie so much, and the press doesn't call them on it. They get sloppy.
Well, you're here today.
Deal with facts.
You're here today. We wanted to see the facts, Rudy. And we got
about 10 more of these.
All right.
Okay.
And then when
we'll keep going.
You'll come back and you will tell us about it.
Yeah,
Rudy Giuliani.
There's going to be like 5, 6 witnesses.
Thank you so much.